Maybe this thought of philosophy being useless has crossed your mind in the past, or maybe you haven't actually thought about it that much. But is philosophy actually a waste of time? Is it useless? So let's try to find out and think about this question deeply. If you truly think about it deeply, philosophy is really the baseline of society. Yes, the baseline of society. And I know this sounds crazy, but at the heart of it, philosophy is just the study of assumptions and conclusions. So how do different assumptions come together and make up conclusions? So assumptions make up the legal system, the judicial system, or even make up our day-to-day life. People go to their day-to-day jobs assuming or having a package of assumptions. So philosophy at the heart of it is really the art of questioning assumptions and conclusions, whatever those assumptions are relating to, whether it's rocket science or mathematics or physics. So as soon as we establish the idea that society and everything around us is actually made up of assumptions, the usefulness of philosophy becomes a bit clearer. So how does this actually relate to life on a day-to-day basis from a practical perspective? If we look closely at the dynamics between assumptions and questions, we see that questions are really compiled of reversed assumptions, if that makes sense. So how does this actually relate to our point? Well, if you have the ability to reverse assumptions and by extension ask better questions, then you have an advantage to learning new things, for example, whether it's a practical skill or actually a theoretical skill. So philosophy will give you an advantage point towards the general laws of the universe and society and psychology, because as we said, it's going to give you the ability to actually think about assumptions better, systematically, through different disciplines of philosophy, and then by extension formulate better questions. So as soon as you have the ability to formulate questions, that will open up a whole variety of other practical advantages we can have, whether it's with making money or actually creating new ideas and all these things. So that gives us a new perspective on thinking about things like philosophy. So the second point, or another point we can actually relate to the usefulness of philosophy, is one from personal experience. So what I've noticed is that actually thinking about philosophical questions or philosophy in general as a whole, without relating to any specifics, is really useful to become a fast learner on whatever skill you want to learn, actually. Because this goes back to our point about questions. If I bring two guys who are trying to study rocket science as beginners, assuming they have the same intelligence, if one of them is actually trained in philosophy, he's going to be able to ask the professor better questions, which by extension will make him learn faster. And that will actually give you all sorts of practical consequences, if that makes sense. So we also see in this case that philosophy as well will give you an advantage point towards learning as a whole when it comes to time, and also when it comes to formulating better questions. Now, a third point that can actually be related to all of this is something I call the filtration mechanism, and that might be a bit less practical than the 2 points we've mentioned, but the filtration mechanism idea is that when you study philosophy, and as we said, you think better about assumptions, and then by extension you think better about conclusions, that will by proxy lead you towards the truth more. And obviously it seems very self-evident that the more you're leaning towards the truth, the better. It's almost self-evident. Now I want to take some time to say that the philosophical and the theoretical is not very much separable from the practical, at least in my conceptualization. Because I think a lot of people say, oh, I want the practical stuff rather than the theoretical stuff, or rather than the philosophical stuff. But actually, if you think about it, the theoretical is just a deeper layer. It's just a deeper layer that requires a lot of thinking in order to actually apply it to real life. So the theoretical is actually disguised practical. You just have to look closely enough at the theoretical or the philosophical to extract something practical from it. So they're not very much separable as people would like to think. Like, you can still study the theoretical or the philosophical and actually look deeper at it and extract something new towards the practical world. So the key insight to mention here is that the practical and the theoretical slash philosophical are not two separate domains. They're actually very much inextricably linked, but the theoretical has maybe a deeper practical layer to it. Like, you have to look at it closer in order to extract something practical from it. So this leads us to the end of the video. I hope you found this video beneficial.